The Nuremberg Trials was a series of 12 U.S. military war tribunals for war crimes against members of the leadership of Nazi Germany. Here, there was a series of medical experiments done on prisoners in concentration camps by Nazi physicians who forced the prisoners into participation into their various medical experiments. There was no volunteering, and in many cases, participants died or were significantly hurt. The Nuremberg Code was a series of 10 very important points that came out as guidelines for human subject research. The biggest takeaway from the Nuremberg Code was the need for the voluntary consent of the human subject. Another takeaway is that the experiment should be conducted as to avoid all unnecessary physical and mental suffering and injury. Also, proper precautions should be made and adequate facilities provided to protect the experimental subject. And lastly, during the course of the experiment, the human subject should be at liberty to bring the experiment to an end if necessary, or if the scientist deems it necessary.
The Tuskegee syphilis study was started in 1932 by the Public Health Service and Tuskegee Institute. The study was designed to determine the natural course of untreated latent syphilis, but subjects were not told this. Rather, researchers told the men that they were being treated for bad blood, a local term used to describe several ailments including syphilis, anemia, and fatigue. 600 African American males were part of this study, 399 of which had syphilis and 201 of which did not have syphilis. These subjects were recruited with misleading promises of special free treatments, and they were enrolled without their informed consent. Through this study, 40 wives contracted syphilis and 19 children were born with congenital syphilis. Even after penicillin was proven to be effective to treat syphilis, these men were all denied the antibiotic and were given no treatment at all. This showed a failure to treat patients appropriately. In 1972, a whistleblower revealed the true intentions of the study, and this led to changes in U.S. law and regulation on the protection of participants in clinical studies. Studies now required informed consent, communication of diagnosis, and accurate reporting of test results. The Tuskegee syphilis study led to the Belmont Report, the establishment for the Office of Human Research Protections, and led to laws and regulations requiring institutional review boards to protect human subjects.
From 1947 to 1987, Willowbrook State School, located in Staten Island, New York, was an institution for mentally disabled children. In an attempt to learn more about and control the prevalence of hepatitis at Willowbrook, Dr. Saul Krugman led a study involving more than 700 children. The study began in 1955 and would last more than 15 years. Children at Willowbrook were intentionally infected with hepatitis in an attempt to track the development of the disease. Krugman had justified this method of research by claiming that the high rate of infection within the institution made it inevitable for the children to become infected anyways. There are several key ethical issues with Krugman's study. The research was not done for the direct benefit of the children involved. Parents who were consented were not properly informed of the risks of participation. Due to lack of available space at Willowbrook, whereas there was available space in the separate hepatitis research building, many parents were coerced into enrolling their child in the study. Ultimately, hepatitis was a situation which was negatively affecting the children at Willowbrook, and rather than preventing hepatitis, Krugman exploited the situation by studying those negatively affected by it.
Hello class, welcome back to Bioethics. Today we're going to be talking about research ethics and its progression over the course of history.
Was there just no regulation at all before World War II, or could researchers just do whatever they wanted?
There were many attempts at guidelines made before. In 1931, Germany's Ministry of Interior made the 1931 guidelines for human experimentation. The main focus of this was providing unambiguous informed consent.
Then we saw that the Tuskegee trials started in 1932. How come they were allowed to do that?
Yes, you're correct. Unfortunately, these were just guidelines, which meant that there was no real enforcement behind them. The government funded the research initially, but the study wasn't carried out in the manner that they thought it would be. Once the government found out that the study wasn't carried out ethically, they pulled funding, yet the experimentation continued.
Oh, that's so terrible. How could they possibly do something like that and nobody did anything to stop them?
You have to put yourself in the time period of these things. Back then, bioethics wasn't as big of a field as it is today. There were no laws put in place for everything, and that's what the researchers tried arguing. They stated that there are no laws that differentiate between the legal and the illegal, and that what they were doing was okay, in a sense.
Hi, I'm Dr. Pachetti. I'll be your guest lecturer for the day.
After those terrible war crimes in the Nuremberg trials, there still wasn't any real progress?
Unfortunately, the Nuremberg Code, which you would think of common sense principles nowadays, had no real power either. However, in the future, they're going to be very impactful, especially with establishing and heavily stressing the principle of informed consent. In 1964, the World Medical Organization wrote up the Declaration of Helsinki, which was definitely a big cornerstone of research ethics. This established the legal guardian as a possible consenting party, prioritized patient health, and pretty much reaffirmed the main ideas of the Nuremberg Code.
This was just a declaration. It had no real power in terms of law, correct?
Exactly. You're getting the hang of things now. Now is when the national attention surrounding the need for enhanced and regulatory research ethics is getting to be a very big issue. In 1972, details of the Tuskegee trial came out in public, forcing it to end, and there was pressure for something to be done for real. Pretty much out of direct ends of this very unethical trial, the National Research Act was enacted in 1974.
Yes, finally, a national act that the government put some regulations into law.
Yes, this was a very important act, as it was the first major act of the government for actually enforcing regulation for human subject experimentation. This created a United States Commission for the Protection of Human Subjects of Biomedical and Behavioral Research to do just that.
So everything is good now?
Not quite. There is still work to be done, but it was a great start. My colleague, Dr. Steve, will be telling you about the Belmont Report.
The Belmont Report was established in 1979. This was a page of guidelines that established the key principles that human subject experimentation and research revolve around today. Respect for persons, or autonomy, beneficence, and justice are the three. Basically, respect for persons shows the need to respect people's abilities to make decisions for themselves. Beneficence details the need to always have the patient's interests always prioritized, and that they are treated in a basic ethical manner. Justice shows the need for equals to actually be treated equally.
That sounds very important. So is this what everyone follows now?
The Belmont Report was extremely crucial for research ethics and is still used today as references start research studies across the nation. In 1981, the CFR basically coded the principles of this report to put them into enforcement. The CFR also established the IRB, or Institutional Review Board, which reviews and accepts all publicly funded research regarding human subjects today. In 1991, the Common Rule broadened the spectrum of government agencies following these ethics. So the Belgian Report, or the three main principles it established, are basically the blueprints for regulating research today.
So as you can see, the Belmont Report was essential for creating the laws and regulations for research ethics.
So now with all the rules and regulations on human research subjects, there aren't any more problems with it, right?
Well, you see, research ethics is a field that still continues to grow today. For example, between 2004 and 2009, 23 academic institutions were conducting a study on premature babies regarding high and low oxygen levels. Before the study had even started, they knew that the difference in oxygen levels would potentially negatively impact babies, yet they conducted it anyways. And in addition, they didn't give informed consent to the parents of the babies regarding what could potentially happen if they were a part of this treatment.
Wow, crazy that happened so recently.
For sure, despite all the work that's been done, there's always room for more progress. As people grow more and more aware of bioethics and its implications on society, they will start understanding how to prevent these problems from happening again in the future.